tensions are continuing to ramp up in Ukraine, and now as really tech companies are putting emergency plans in place to help their employees in the country. A number of Israeli startups have extended offers of temporary relocation and financial support as well to employees and their immediate families living in Ukraine. And there are tens of thousands of developers in Ukraine, just to put this into perspective for you, who provide services to Israeli tech companies amid a chronic shortage of tech talent in Israel. Now, more than a dozen countries have urged their citizens to leave Ukraine as leaders warn of an impending war with Russia. And now experts are even warning that the conflict could cause inflation to hit 10%. Well, joining us now is I-24 News host and economic analyst Ariel Margalith to break this down. So, explain how this conflict could impact inflation and the cost of living worldwide.
So first of all, as you mentioned, the fear is that inflation that's already at 7% in the U.S., 3.1% here in Israel, could increase if we are indeed to see an invasion of Russia into Ukraine. Why? It's a good question. First of all, supply chains are not doing so well. They're heavily suffering from the COVID-19 pandemic. So a shortage of oil, for example. Russia is a huge manufacturer of oil. That could lead to shortage in industries, for example. Then there's shipment, etc. Ports and seas that are clogged due to COVID, and the situation might worsen definitely if a war breaks out. And also the stock exchange. We've seen, and we'll talk about in a second, what it did on Monday, just after the U.S. decided that it's going to withdraw its diplomats from Ukraine.
So, we're seeing oil prices jump. You just referred to how this will impact, the oil market. And this is happening, of course, as the risk of Russia invading seems to be increasing. Why? And what are other products at risk?
Yeah, so first of all, as we mentioned, gas. Russia is the #2 exporter of oil to the West and globally generally. So you might definitely see gas prices increase. That means petrol that is already skyrocketing here in Israel, for example, might get even more expensive. Another thing is food prices. Russia is a major producer of wheat in the world, and also Ukraine is a major producer of barley and of corn. So we might see shortages of those if those countries are at war. Third, the interest rates. Already we're talking about the federal bank in the U.S. and also here in Israel, who always follows the decisions of the Fed in the U.S., going to increase the interest during 2022. And if we're going to see a war, there's going to be even a further need in order to increase interest rate. Last is the stock market. As I said, we just saw the stock market, both the NASDAQ and the NYSE composite drop by, around 1.5% or 2% when the U.S. decided that it's going to withdraw its diplomats from Kiev, and we might see more in that direction if there is indeed a war.
Now, there are always certain industries that thrive during wartime. What can we expect to happen on that end? Where will there be, I guess, an upside of sorts? Yeah,
so there's always, when you look at your basket and you try to diversify your investment, there's always, with large investors, at least some war shares that they have in their portfolio. And we can mention some things that flourish during war. For example, logistics, arms manufacturers and heavy equipment, arms dealing companies, etc. And then, of course, there's also reconstruction companies that come on the stage after war, and those often rise. Also personal security, people often hire private companies, some of them are traded, and this is also a sector that often does well. Let's hope there isn't a war and that people continue to invest in peacekeeping shares rather than in war shares.